Claire forced a polite smile as the waiter filled their water glasses and stepped away. Across the table, Nathan seemed completely at ease, as if nothing about the evening was unusual. That alone confused her. She had spent nearly an hour preparing for this date, not to impress him, but to do the exact opposite. The oversized sweater hanging loosely from her shoulders had been buried in the back of her closet for years. Her shoes were old. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail. She had not worn makeup. She had deliberately chosen every detail to send a message. If a man was interested only in appearances, she wanted him to reveal himself immediately. It was a lesson life had taught her the hard way. Years earlier, after her marriage ended, Claire had promised herself she would never again ignore warning signs. She had spent too many nights rebuilding her confidence, too many mornings pretending everything was fine for her daughter, and too many years learning how quickly people could disappoint you when they wanted something from you. That was why she hated blind dates. Most of them felt like interviews disguised as conversations. Yet Nathan was not acting the way she expected. He was not distracted. He was not checking his phone. He was not scanning the room for someone more attractive. In fact, every time she looked up, she found him listening carefully to whatever she was saying. It made her uneasy. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said. Claire nodded cautiously. "What made you become a teacher?" Most men usually asked different questions. They asked about hobbies, vacations, favorite restaurants, or things that sounded impressive. Nathan asked about her work. Claire hesitated before answering. Then she found herself talking about her students, about helping children discover confidence, about the small victories that made difficult days worthwhile. To her surprise, Nathan seemed genuinely interested. As the conversation continued, Claire slowly lowered some of her defenses. Not all of them, just enough to notice that she was actually enjoying herself. That realization irritated her. She had come prepared to leave early. Instead, 2 hours had passed without her noticing. Then Nathan asked another unexpected question. "What is the most important thing in your life?" Claire did not even need a second to think. "My daughter." Nathan smiled. Not the polite smile people often used. It was warmer than that, more sincere. "Then she is lucky to have you." The words caught her off guard. For a brief moment, she did not know how to respond. Most people admired parents who seemed successful. Very few admired the struggle itself. Nathan appeared to understand the difference. Claire looked away and took a sip of water. Something about this evening was no longer following the script she had imagined. The test she had carefully designed was supposed to expose a shallow man. Instead, it seemed to be revealing something she was not prepared for. And as Nathan leaned forward and asked if he could see her again sometime, Claire realized that for the first time in years, she did not know what answer would protect her heart. Claire spent the entire drive home questioning herself. She had expected the evening to confirm everything she believed about dating. Instead, Nathan had left her confused in the most uncomfortable way possible. When she walked through the front door of her small house, her 7-year-old daughter Sophie was already waiting in the living room with Claire's mother, who had been babysitting for the evening. Sophie jumped up from the couch. "Mom, how was your date?" Claire laughed softly and set her purse down. "It was fine." Sophie narrowed her eyes. "That means it was either really good or really bad." Claire kissed the top of her daughter's head and avoided the question. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Claire sat alone at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. Nathan had texted her, "Thank you for tonight. I would love to see you again if you are interested." The message was simple. No pressure, no games, no exaggerated compliments, just honesty. She read it 3 times before finally responding. The next few weeks surprised her even more. Nathan never tried to impress her with expensive places or extravagant plans. Instead, he suggested simple things. A walk through a local park, coffee on a Saturday morning, visiting a community art festival downtown. Every time Claire expected him to reveal some hidden flaw, he did the opposite. He listened. He remembered details. He asked about her students and actually remembered their names when she mentioned them again later. Most importantly, he never seemed bothered by the fact that her life revolved around Sophie. One Saturday afternoon, a problem at school forced Claire to cancel their plans at the last minute. She expected disappointment. Instead, Nathan simply asked if everything was okay. That was when Claire realized how different he was from anyone she had dated before. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Sophie's after-school program ended early because of a staffing issue. Claire was stuck in a parent-teacher meeting across town. Out of options, she called Nathan. She almost regretted it the moment he answered. They had only been seeing each other for a short time. Asking for help felt risky. Yet Nathan agreed immediately. When Claire arrived 40 minutes later, she found Sophie sitting at a picnic table outside the community center laughing so hard she could barely speak. Nathan sat across from her, helping her build a small model airplane from a craft kit someone had provided at the center. The sight stopped Claire in her tracks. Sophie rarely connected with new people so quickly, but somehow Nathan had earned her trust within an hour. On the drive home, Sophie could not stop talking about him. "He is funny, Mom. And he actually listens." Claire smiled despite herself. Later that evening, after Sophie was asleep, Claire received another text from Nathan. "I had a great time today. Your daughter is incredible." Claire stared at the message for several seconds. Her heart was beginning to move in a direction she had promised herself it never would again. What she did not know was that someone from her past was about to reappear and change everything. The following Monday began like any other. Claire arrived at school before sunrise, organized lesson plans, answered emails, and prepared for another busy week. For a few hours, life felt normal. Then, just after lunch, the front office called her classroom. The secretary's voice sounded unusually cautious. "Claire, there is someone here asking to speak with you." Claire assumed it was a parent. She apologized to her students and walked toward the administrative office. The moment she stepped through the doorway, her stomach tightened. Standing near the reception desk was her former husband, Daniel. She had not seen him in nearly 8 months. Daniel looked older than she remembered. His expensive confidence seemed replaced by nervous energy. Claire immediately glanced around the office, worried Sophie might somehow be involved. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly. Daniel forced a smile. "I wanted to talk." Claire folded her arms. "You could have called." "I know." He looked down briefly. "I just thought this would be better." Nothing about this felt better. Their divorce had been difficult, not because of dramatic arguments, but because Daniel had slowly drifted away from their family long before the marriage officially ended. Over time, broken promises became routine. Missed visits became common. Sophie had learned not to expect too much. Claire had spent years helping her daughter heal from disappointments she never deserved. Now Daniel suddenly wanted to talk. Claire agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop after school. Throughout the afternoon, she struggled to focus. When the final bell rang, she drove to the meeting with a growing sense of unease. Daniel arrived 10 minutes late. Some habits never changed. After a few minutes of awkward conversation, he finally explained why he had come. He had recently accepted a new position in another state. The job paid well. It offered stability. He claimed he wanted a fresh start. At first, Claire felt relieved. Then he added one sentence that changed everything. "I want Sophie to come live with me." Claire stared at him in disbelief. For a moment, she wondered if she had misunderstood. Sophie had spent almost her entire life with Claire. Every school project, every doctor's appointment, every birthday party, every difficult moment had been shared between mother and daughter. Now Daniel was talking as if he could simply rearrange their lives. Claire remained calm, but inside she felt shaken. Daniel insisted he had changed. He talked about opportunities, better neighborhoods, and stronger financial security. Claire listened carefully, but something felt wrong. This was not about Sophie. It sounded more like Daniel trying to rewrite his own story. When the conversation finally ended, Claire drove home emotionally exhausted. That evening, she found Nathan waiting outside her house with a takeout dinner he knew she liked. He immediately noticed something was wrong. As they sat on the porch while Sophie finished homework inside, Claire told him everything. Nathan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he spoke softly. "You are a good mother, Claire. Do not let anyone make you question that." His words offered comfort, but they could not erase the fear growing inside her. Because for the first time in years, Daniel seemed determined. And Claire had a feeling this was only the beginning of a much larger problem. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel became impossible to ignore. He called more often than he had in years. He showed up for every scheduled visit with Sophie. He suddenly wanted updates about school, activities, and future plans. To an outsider, it might have looked admirable. To Claire, it felt unsettling. She had spent years hoping Daniel would become a more involved father. Now that he was finally making an effort, she should have been happy. Instead, she felt as though she was watching someone perform for an audience. Sophie noticed the change too. One evening after dinner, she sat at the kitchen table coloring while Claire washed dishes. "Dad has been acting weird lately," Sophie said. Claire turned off the faucet. What do you mean? Sophie shrugged. He keeps asking if I would like living somewhere else. Claire felt her chest tighten. She carefully dried her hands and sat beside her daughter. And what do you tell him? Sophie looked down at her drawing. I tell him my home is here. Claire smiled softly and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. In that moment, she felt both relieved and worried. Relieved because Sophie seemed secure. Worried because children should never feel caught between adults. Meanwhile, Nathan remained a steady presence in their lives. He never pushed for more than Claire was ready to give. He never offered opinions she did not ask for. Yet somehow he always seemed to know exactly when she needed support. One Saturday afternoon, he joined Claire and Sophie at a community fair near the town square. Sophie spent nearly an hour trying to win a giant stuffed bear at a ring toss booth. After several failed attempts, Nathan quietly bought a handful of extra rings and handed them to her. When she finally won, her excitement could be heard across the fairgrounds. Claire watched the two of them walking ahead of her, Sophie proudly carrying the oversized bear while Nathan listened to her endless stories. For the first time in a very long time, the future did not seem frightening. It seemed possible. Then everything changed 3 days later. Claire was eating lunch in the teacher's lounge when a coworker walked in holding a business magazine. You know this guy? The woman asked casually. Claire glanced at the cover and nearly dropped her coffee. Staring back at her was Nathan. The photograph showed him standing in front of a modern glass building beneath a headline celebrating one of the most influential business leaders in the country. Claire grabbed the magazine and began reading. Her pulse quickened with every sentence. Founder, investor, billionaire, national recognition, major acquisitions, private foundation. The man she thought was living a simple, comfortable life was apparently one of the wealthiest people in America. She sat frozen for several seconds. Memories from the past few months raced through her mind. Every conversation, every date, every moment he had carefully avoided talking about himself. He had never lied, but he had certainly never told her the full truth. That evening, Claire drove home with the magazine on the passenger seat beside her. She did not know whether she felt shocked, angry, hurt, or embarrassed. All she knew was that Nathan was waiting for her answer. And for the first time since meeting him, she was not sure she wanted to hear what he had to say. Claire barely slept that night. The magazine remained on her kitchen table long after everyone had gone to bed. Every time she looked at the cover, she felt a mixture of confusion and disappointment. It was not Nathan's success that bothered her. She respected hard work. She admired achievement. What troubled her was the feeling that an important part of his life had been hidden from her. The next afternoon, Nathan called. Claire almost ignored the call, but eventually answered. Before she could say anything, Nathan spoke first. I was hoping you would hear it from me, not from a magazine. His calm honesty caught her off guard. They agreed to meet that evening at the same park where they had shared one of their earliest dates. When Claire arrived, Nathan was already waiting near a walking trail lined with oak trees. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Claire held up the magazine. How long were you planning to keep this from me? Nathan sighed. I was never trying to hide it forever. But you hid it from me. Nathan nodded. Yes, I did. Claire appreciated that he was not making excuses, but it did not erase her frustration. Nathan looked out toward the trail before continuing. Do you know what happens when most people find out who I am? Claire remained silent. They stop seeing me. They see my money, my companies, my reputation. Every conversation changes. Every relationship changes. I wanted at least one chance to meet someone who was interested in me, not everything attached to my name. Claire thought about the blind date. She thought about the oversized sweater she had intentionally worn. She thought about how she had created her own test that night. Suddenly, she realized they had both been hiding something. Nathan had concealed his wealth. She had concealed her appearance and confidence. Neither had trusted the other enough to be fully honest. The realization softened some of her anger. You should have told me, she said quietly. I know. Nathan's voice carried genuine regret. And I am sorry. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nathan added something unexpected. The truth is, Claire, I knew there was something different about you from the first night. She looked at him carefully. Because I showed up looking terrible? A small smile crossed Nathan's face. Actually, yes. Claire laughed despite herself. Nathan continued. Everyone else spent their energy trying to impress people. You did not. You were real. That was impossible to ignore. His words touched something deep inside her. Yet before she could respond, her phone suddenly vibrated. The caller identification displayed Daniel's name. Claire answered, expecting another discussion about Sophie. Instead, Daniel sounded unusually excited. "I just learned something interesting," he said. "Your boyfriend is a billionaire." Claire closed her eyes. Somehow she knew this conversation was about to create an entirely new problem. And judging by the confidence in Daniel's voice, he was already planning to use that information to his advantage. The days that followed became some of the most emotionally exhausting Claire had experienced in years. News about Nathan spread quickly through town. People who had barely noticed him before suddenly seemed fascinated by every detail of his life. Parents at school whispered about him. Neighbors asked questions. Even complete strangers seemed eager to share opinions. Claire hated the attention. She had spent years building a quiet life centered around her daughter and her students. Now it felt as though that privacy was slipping away. Daniel wasted no time taking advantage of the situation. During a scheduled meeting to discuss Sophie, he arrived with a confidence that immediately put Claire on edge. Throughout the conversation, he repeatedly mentioned Nathan's wealth. At first, Claire tried to ignore it. Then Daniel finally revealed what he was really thinking. He suggested that Claire's relationship with Nathan could create instability for Sophie. He implied that the sudden presence of extreme wealth might confuse their daughter. The argument sounded ridiculous, but Claire recognized the danger behind it. Daniel was preparing a narrative. He wanted people to believe that Claire had become distracted by a wealthy man, that she was making decisions based on emotion instead of responsibility. The accusation hurt because it attacked the very thing she valued most. Being a good mother had always been her highest priority. Later that evening, Claire sat alone in her living room after Sophie had gone to bed. Nathan called several times, but she could not bring herself to answer. Her thoughts kept returning to the same question. What if Daniel succeeded in creating doubt around her parenting? What if their relationship brought unwanted complications into Sophie's life? The next morning, Nathan appeared outside her house. Claire stepped onto the porch before he could knock. He immediately sensed something was wrong. "Talk to me," he said gently. Claire looked away. "Everything has become complicated." Nathan remained silent, allowing her to continue. "People are talking. Daniel is using this against me. Everywhere I go, someone has an opinion." Nathan took a slow breath. "Then let them talk." Claire shook her head. "You do not understand. My daughter comes first. She always will." "I know that," Nathan replied. "That is one of the reasons I care about you." Those words only made the situation harder. Claire felt tears gathering in her eyes. Not because she doubted Nathan's feelings, but because she believed them, and that frightened her. For months, she had slowly allowed herself to trust him. Now she feared that trust might come with consequences she could not control. After a long silence, she made the decision she had been dreading. "I think we need some distance." Nathan's expression changed for the first time since she had met him. The disappointment in his eyes was impossible to miss. Yet he did not argue. He did not pressure her. He simply nodded. "If that is what you need, I will respect it." Claire watched him walk back toward his car, and every step felt heavier than the last. Deep down, she knew she was not ending things because she had stopped caring. She was doing it because she cared too much. But as Nathan drove away and disappeared down the street, neither of them realized that the truth behind their relationship was about to become public in a way neither could have predicted. 3 weeks passed without a single date, yet Nathan remained present in ways Claire never expected. He never pressured her to reconsider. He never appeared unexpectedly. He simply respected the space she had asked for. Then one Saturday morning, Claire attended a community education fundraiser at the elementary school. Parents, teachers, and local business leaders filled the gymnasium. Claire was helping organize student projects when she noticed unusual excitement spreading through the crowd. Conversations grew louder. Phones appeared. People began turning toward the entrance. Moments later, Nathan walked inside. Claire's heart immediately raced. He was not dressed like a billionaire. He looked exactly as he always had. Calm, approachable, familiar. Before Claire could react, the school principal stepped onto the stage and thanked a donor whose identity had remained anonymous for years. The principal explained that countless educational programs, student scholarships, classroom renovations, and family assistance initiatives had been funded through private contributions. Then he invited the donor to join him. Nathan walked onto the stage. The room erupted into applause. Claire stood frozen. she had never known. No interviews. No publicity campaigns. No giant signs with his name. For years, he had quietly invested in schools and families without seeking recognition. As the applause faded, the principal shared one final story. Several years earlier, when budget cuts threatened programs for children from struggling households, Nathan had personally covered the funding gap. Hundreds of students had benefited. Many families never learned who helped them. Claire felt tears forming in her eyes. Suddenly, she understood something important. Nathan had never hidden his wealth because he was ashamed of it. He had hidden it because he wanted people to know his character before his bank account. After the ceremony ended, Claire stepped outside to clear her thoughts. She found Nathan standing beneath a large oak tree near the parking lot. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Claire broke the silence. "Why did you never tell me any of that?" Nathan smiled softly. "Because I wanted you to know me, not my reputation." Claire looked down. "I thought I was protecting Sophie." "I know." Nathan's voice remained gentle. "That is what good mothers do." Claire looked up. "And what if protecting her cost me something important?" Nathan took a slow breath. "Then the choice should be yours, not other people's." Before Claire could answer, a small voice interrupted them. Sophie came running across the grass, carrying the giant stuffed bear Nathan had helped her win weeks earlier. She stopped beside them and looked from one adult to the other. "Are you two done being stubborn?" Both Claire and Nathan stared at her in surprise. Sophie folded her arms. "Because everyone can tell you miss each other." The unexpected honesty made all three of them laugh. In that moment, the fear, pressure, and outside opinions seemed to disappear. Only the truth remained. Nathan had fallen for Claire on the night she tried hardest not to impress anyone. Claire had learned that the man behind the success was exactly the person she hoped he was. Several months later, surrounded by family, friends, and one very excited little girl, Nathan asked Claire to marry him. This time, there were no tests, no secrets, and no doubts. There was only trust, love, and the future they had chosen to build together.